listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be covering a really intriguing day 4 of the first test between England and India. It's a day which went one way, then the other, then back the other way again, yin and yang, ebb and flow. It had everything. We saw Joe Root at his fluent best. We saw a couple of great spells from Jasper Brumra. We saw some punchy hitting from England down the order. We saw Siraj on the warpath. And then we saw India bat reasonably well till close to leave themselves with a really good chance of taking the first match of this series. I'm Jack Hope, and today I'm joined by Dan Weston. How are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, I'm really well, Jack. Yeah, great to be back on the show.
Yeah. Just a reminder before we get going that you can find us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. We're sponsored by Woodstock Cricket, so you should go and buy a new cricket bat immediately from them using the code TCP25 to get yourself 25% off. And you should head over to Patreon, patreon.com/thecricketpod, to get involved with us directly. Normally, I get Ross or Max to do a summary of the day, but because Ross and Max have, selfishly decided to make plans with their Saturday night, I'm doing the summary, so here goes. England, they started the day with a 70-run deficit, but despite losing Burns and Crawley before lunch, they were able to make good progress towards reducing that. That is before Sibley was out, and then it kind of got left to the England middle order, and we had a pretty thrilling second session as England kept edging ahead in the game before India pulled them back. Bairstow, Lawrence and Buttler all hit a flurry of boundaries before finding an array of hilarious ways to get themselves out. I think we had Bairstow falling into the dumbest trap, or the most obvious trap of all time. We had Dan Lawrence missing the ball by 6 inches. A ball that just didn't move, was 75 miles an hour, hitting middle stump, played a forward defence, missed it by 6 inches. It was astonishing. And then Buttler capping them all by leaving a straight one. It was bizarre. Meanwhile, at the other end, Joe Root was in imperious form, and to be honest, I think is the real story of the day. He notched his 21st century, his first in England since 2018, 109 runs from 172 balls, 14 fours. Jasper Brumra eventually managed to dismiss him, but by that point, England were 179 runs ahead. Then there was a little spell of total mayhem as Curran and Robinson slogged the ball around a little bit, and they managed to get up to a total that meant they were that India would need 209 to win. India came out in the last hour of the day. They've been pretty serene, made it up to 52 before close, which sets up what should be an intriguing day, albeit India are slightly ahead of the equation. Fingers crossed the rain stays away. Dan, I think we should probably start with the story of the day, and that's Joe Root. A pretty astonishing innings from him, and once again your video's gone, so if you want to reset it and start again, you can. You're stuck in a very pensive pose at the moment, which is good. Yeah, you're good. Cool. So Joe Root, what did you think?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do with recruitment a lot is I look at players who outperform their teammates, and on a consistent basis, and I think it's pretty fair to say that Joe Root does that on a consistent basis. And obviously, scoring 109 where no other player passed 32 in the innings is going to having the weighted average is going to be extremely high. I think at 109, you can make a case probably for saying that's like a 150, 160 on another day. That really was, an epic knock. And yeah, it's put England in a position where they've at least given themselves a chance of defending something, but I think it's still going to take a lot on the final day. It's going to be set up for a cracking first session, I think, tomorrow. England are going to need to get a few early wickets.
Yeah, Joe Root. I mean, I think the context is everything with this innings from Joe Root. He's the only England batter to pass 50 across both innings of the match. It's his 4th century of the year, first in England since 2018, also against India. He came in when his team were 44 runs behind, and when he was out, they were 179 runs ahead. I mean, just the WinViz swing on those 2 points should tell you how sort of monumental that innings was. The match average, I think, so far has been about 26. I worked it out before India's innings, so it's maybe fluctuated slightly since then. He also got 64 in the first innings, as I said, so for a match aggregate of 173. I mean, I don't know where we want to go here. Part of me wants to ask, Dan, how fucked would England be without Joe Root?
I think royally is the only answer. I mean, like you said, he 109 and 64. No other batters past 32, and that's no top 6 batter in both innings has passed 30. And I think that's probably an apt description of England's sort of, I will say, batting talents, but it's not really. It's lack of batting talents. It's the cupboard is bare, I think it's fair to say. In Test cricket, obviously in white ball cricket, it's the opposite. It's overflowing. You couldn't shut the cupboard because it's so overflowing. But in Test cricket, sadly not.
Phoenix in the chat saying Joe Root is like a professional playing in an amateur side, and that's not actually a bad analogy for this. Yeah. Last weekend, Ross and I played a Sunday friendly. Ross and I are all right at cricket. We're nothing special, and the team we were playing for, nobody was that special. But we had one guy who played for Surrey Seconds last year. He faced 15 balls and got 52.
It's funny because I used to play village cricket back in the day before I got old and fat and injured. And basically, one day, it must have been about 10 years ago, we had this random Australian guy turned up, just called himself Nick. And we found out he was an overseas player for Tunbridge Wells. And it was actually Nick Selman, who plays for Glamorgan, and hit 150 against Leicester the other day. He hit about 200 and about 100 balls.
That's a pretty good ringer to bring along. I mean, I guess the next question to ask, in terms of England, is, around Root, they were quite positive. They scored at 3.5 runs and over. Bearing in mind the situation of the game at the beginning of the day, Dan, were you surprised at this approach, or do you think this is something they maybe talked about and I guess if you're going to be rubbish, you might as well be rubbish and chance your arm a little bit. Is that what they were thinking?
Maybe conditions orientated as well, and they just thought, oh well, they better be positive. But obviously, in terms of positivity, it was a mixed bag. You had Root striking at what's that, about 65 strike rate, Bairstow similar, Lawrence similar, Butler similar, Curran similar, and then we had Dom Sibley who had the opposite approach. Actually, I don't mind. We spoke about this privately, didn't we, as well? And I actually think that there's a lot to be said for Sibley's approach in these circumstances, and I've got no problem with it at all. And Twitter is I think a very polarised place. Not at the best of times, but I'm talking about Sibley's innings in particular here. I have a very strong view on these type of innings, and I think we sort of spoke a little bit about this already. But if you're the best team in the world, you don't want people playing in innings like that, because it increases your draw percentage and decreases your win percentage. So if you're the best team in the world, you want to maximise your win percentage because you're the best team in the world. But England aren't the best team in the world, and they're probably not even favourites at home against India. So you actually want someone who can increase your draw percentage at you're trading off against that win percentage, because then it reduces your chances of losing at the same time. And 28 of 133, actually, I think, in a match situation, batting with Root. Root was fluent at the other end. I don't have any dramas with that at all. I think Sibley, I've done some maths, he averages 87 balls per dismissal in Test cricket. Now, at county cricket, I have a lot of benchmarks. Obviously, I work for county teams, so I know what's good and what's bad. And if a batter averages over 70 balls per dismissal, that's pretty positive. He's averaging 87 balls per dismissal in Test cricket, which is all you can ask for your opening batter. Now, and I also want to make a further point about this as well, because I think, I think social media and just the general population are very guilty of looking at this match or this moment in an isolation and not looking at the bigger picture. And then it's probably a societal problem in general as well. But Sibley, he's faced 203 balls in this match for 46 runs, right? So over 100 balls average per dismissal, right?
Yeah.
Now, if he's bats 200 balls in every single Test match of this summer, he's putting a lot of mileage into those Indian bowlers' legs, and and there could be some net benefit to that approach, say in Test 4, Test 5, when the bowlers are going to be more fatigued than if he'd have done like what Dan Lawrence did and scored 25 of 32, which is basically the same amount of runs, but in about a quarter of the balls. Yeah. So, like, if you're not the best team in the world, which England aren't, all good with that approach, and I would keep Sibley in for long term. I think there's a lot to be said for his approach for England right now. And we've tried the aggressive openers, Roy, Hales. It didn't work at all. There's no one in county cricket who's any better than him. He's a very, very good county player. And the same with Burns. Keep them in. The positions I do have doubts on are Crawley and Lawrence, and I think maybe we can talk about that a bit as well.
Sure. So I've got some ideas on how England could maybe solve their batting. I think we will get to them. I think that's a really good point about Dom Sibley. And the other thing is, there's an argument. I think there's another argument you can make that Dom Sibley, in addition to the points you make in terms of putting fatigue into bowlers' legs, in terms of increasing the draw percentage, he probably is going to have a higher average than a lot of the in theory replacements that you could bring in for. And so if you're not really worried about strike rate, because like as you say, England aren't the best team in the world, and increasing the chances of a draw against India is probably a good thing from their point of view, then couple that with he's probably going to score more runs overall than the replacement. What I don't really get what the argument is. I think it's reasonably settled, that one. Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about Jasper Brumra? I think our Indian fans will want to hear about him. Before the series, we had Dan Norcross on the show, and he questioned how fit and how effective Jasper Brumra might be in this series. I think possibly based on his performance against New Zealand in the World Test Championship final. I think it's fair to say that question's been answered over the two innings so far. He was by far and away India's best bowler. And I want to talk about some of their bad bowling as well. But Jasper Brumra, 5 wickets for 64 runs. From his 19 overs, he picks up Sibley, he picks up Root, he blows away the tail. Pretty phenomenal bowling performance, I thought, from Jasper.
World-class player, simple as that, isn't it, really? I mean, anyone who's heard us doing our IPL podcasts over recent years knows that I rate Brumra extremely highly. I think he's the best local pace bowler in the competition by a long way. And, doing exactly that in Test cricket as well. Not 9 for 110 match figures, 23 average in Test cricket. There's not much to argue with that, really, is there?
No, he was so good. That Yorker he bowled to Stuart Broad, mate. It was one of those ones. It was like you could have told Stuart Broad, 2 weeks' notice, practice this against the bowling machine, get ready, it's coming, and he'd still have missed it. he was nowhere near it.
He used to be a number 8, and now it's probably a number 12.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I'm not saying Stuart Broad's an amazing batter, but no. It was a couple of wickets left. Robinson at the other end. The lead wasn't in danger of getting out of hand, but if it got to 250, which it might have done if Robinson had chanced his arm, and Broad sometimes good for 15 or 20, that would have been more of a challenge. Instead, it's immediately the England are down to their final wicket. Great bowling, I thought. On the other hand, though, a few of the other Indian bowlers well, all of the other Indian bowlers, I think, struggled a little bit, possibly with the exception of Shardul Thakur, who benefited from some questionable batting from Butler and Lawrence. What do you think they got wrong, Siraj, Shammy, Jadeja, across this test or across this innings?
I don't know, because I was travelling for a lot of the first half of the day, so that was difficult for me to comment. But I mean, it's a shame Ross isn't here, because I know he's a big fan of Shardul Thakur. I don't know. I mean, Jadeja's bowled 16 overs, 0 for 50. England didn't bowl a spinner. Was that? I know he scored a 50 in the first innings, but I am firmly of the belief that there's a lot of situations in English Test cricket, where you don't need a specialist spinner, and I think probably the fact that it's rained a lot and is probably extremely conducive to strong pace bowling conditions at Nottingham is as good an example as you'll find with anything. And England obviously didn't go down that road, so that was a kind of a wasted option, if you like.
That's interesting. So I thought
pace is a batter, to be honest with you, though.
I thought. Well, no, I think there's no contest there. Jadeja should be in the team. Probably because as a batter. But I did think that there was an argument to be made from the Indian point of view with selection, and in hindsight, I think they picked the right team. But I think there's an argument to be made that you could play the matchup over the conditions against this England side. England are humiliatingly bad against spin on any surface that offers assistance. Maybe I think they probably called this right. It hasn't spun at all, really, or hasn't. The bounce has been really consistent, is what I would say. And even if it spins, if the bounce is consistent, top level batters, even those who aren't great against spin, can generally handle it. When it kicks out the surface a little bit more, it can be trickier.
Question about Thakur, Siraj in general.
Yeah.
Now, while we've spoken about England's lack of batting talent in Test cricket, they've got bowlers. They've got so many good bowlers they can choose from. Like Ollie Robinson's come out of Test cricket and taken to Test cricket came out of county cricket, taken to Test cricket like a duck to water. There's other bowlers in county cricket I think who could do a very similar job as well. I mean, in English conditions, probably Davron Stevens could probably do pretty well in Test cricket, but I'm unconvinced whether Siraj or Thakur would get anywhere near England's team.
Right, so I agree with this, and I feel like this might not be the most popular opinion in the world. First of all, Shardul Thakur, I think, is only just a little bit better than Paul Collingwood in terms of what he offers. I think, look, he's picked up some wickets in this match, but there's been the batting against him has been humiliatingly bad. Josh Butler bowled, leaving a ball on a sunny day against a 75-mile-an-hour bowler who wasn't swinging it. Playing it, I think, but leaving based on length, I think. But it's just one of the most bizarre dismissals I think I've seen. He's been out 4 times, leaving the ball, bowled, leaving the ball. That's more times than any other batter on record. You have to question the thought process and the skills, the fundamental skills there in terms of being able to judge the ball, or at least the game plan. I mean, why are you not trying to hit that? Shardul Thakur was also when he got Butler out, he was bowling at a point in the game when the ball was old, and really England should have been pressing on. I think that was the opportunity to hit a bowler who wasn't very good, and isn't very good, around for 5 and over. And put India under real pressure when the new ball came. Instead, he left one that was hitting off stump, and England's second best batter over the last 3 years is back in the pavilion. So that was really odd. And Dan Lawrence as well. He'd hit him for 2 2s and a 4 in consecutive balls, and then misses. I'm not sure if you saw this, Dan. Misses a ball that's hitting middle stump is hit in front by 6 inches. His bat, it misses the ball by 6 inches. Again, no swing. It's basically a foot away from being a half volley, and he just dangles his bat. And it's bizarre batting from one guy who maybe shouldn't be in the team, and from one guy who fundamentally should have a better game plan. So I don't think he should be there. And I think Siraj as well. Siraj, I don't know. Again, I'm not sure how much of this you saw. He was giving it. He was being the big man. He was bowling bouncers, shushing Bairstow as he went off the pitch. After Bairstow got himself out, basically. I mean, Siraj bowled a long hop. It should have gone into the Trent. It should have gone miles, that ball. And instead he's hit it flat to Jadeja. And it is out caught. Siraj shushes him. Siraj, across his innings, has been bad. Across this game has been bad. I mentioned earlier the match average is about 26. So he's got 2 for 84 in the first innings and 1 for 48 in the second. Quick maths. That's Dan. That's 132 for 3 across the innings. So that's really average bowling, and at a good run rate as well from the England point of view. Yeah. If you're bowling like that, don't be the big man. Pipe down and bowl. Pipe down and think about what you're doing. You can't be the big man if you're getting hit around, and he was getting slapped. If they had Ishant Sharma instead of Mohammad Siraj, I think India would be in the pavilion with the win by now.
Yeah, to be honest, Kumar as well.
I asked a question on Twitter actually, and you don't have to answer this, but today it felt a little bit like it was a contest between, Brumra and Root basically, and then like the dregs of the bowling supporting Brumra and the dregs of the batters from England supporting Root, and it it wasn't the most edifying contest. There was some pretty average bowling and there was some pretty average batting from both sides. It was just elevated by these two supreme talents, and all of that contributed to make it a fantastic day's cricket. And I'm not. Obviously these guys have got skills, and I know Siraj was good against Australia, and like I'm getting a load of stuff in the chat now from people saying that. But he wasn't good today, and maybe that's because he hasn't got much experience bowling in England. It's something you do see quite a lot, I think, Dan, is overseas players or teams from other nations coming to England and not really being able to control the Duke's ball, bowling a lot of exciting looking deliveries, but not really in a very good area. And I think Siraj fell into that trap a little bit, bowled a little bit too full. And I do think he probably is better. But if you are bowling like a drain, don't shush people off the pitch. Yeah. Like, especially if there's a better option. I mean, like, you're going to be dropped for the next match. That's not particularly, like... It's very difficult to be the big man when everyone knows your second choice. So that's all I'd say on that. It was one of those moments where I was like, what are you doing?
Do you think he might shush the crowd if he's the sub fielder?
Let's talk about, because we've talked, there. I wasn't super. I mean, Shammy in the first innings was very good. Wasn't good in this one. I think he bowled a little bit too full, actually. But he got knocked he's been knocked historically in England for bowling a bit too short. I think that length's good, and he's just been a bit unlucky. Bowled a bit full today, and England made the most of it on the front foot. The rest of the England batting, besides Root, though, I think we need to talk about, and this is a theme that you've spoken about on this show quite a few times, Dan. They've picked the wrong team.
Yeah. Where do we even start? Okay, so I no dramas with the opening partnership at all. I think some people do, I don't. I'm quite happy with. You definitely don't find better players in county cricket than Burns and Sibley, and they've done enough in Test cricket to warrant an extended run in the team. Certainly, obviously, Root is he chooses when he stops. Basically, I think that's fair to say. The rest of them, the jury is either out or they should not be playing. Is Johnny Bairstow a good Test cricketer? The answer is we don't know, because he hasn't played enough domestic cricket over the last few years to answer the question, and he hasn't done well enough in Test cricket over the last few years to answer the question. We know that he, at some points in the past, usually when he batted further down the order, he was a good Test batsman. We don't know that now. Now, the two other players that are in the top six that we haven't mentioned out in the last minute or so is Crawley and Lawrence. Now, I think it's fair to say that both players have. I'm reluctant to use this phrase, but it's a bit Peter principle. If you know what the Peter principle is.
Yeah, do you want to explain it briefly though? It's the idea that you get promoted to a level, and then at that level you don't get promoted anymore. I mean,
so basically you get promoted. It's more of an organisational thing, but you get promoted to your highest level of incompetence, basically. And I think that's quite apt, because these are guys who haven't done that well in county cricket yet. And I'm sorry, and I think I've made this point on the pod before, and I've certainly written about it a few times before as well, is if you can't average more than 40 against 75 mile an hour, 80 mile an hour seamers, if you can't deal with guys, who are good county bowlers, Darren Stevens, Chris Rushworth on a green seamer up at Chester Street, people like that, what on earth possesses the selectors to think, he doesn't do well. He doesn't do that well against county seamers, but we'll stick him in against Broomer and see how he gets on. Like it just bears no logic whatsoever, and people might have a counter argument and say, when he's played pace on, he's done all right and stuff, but this is a huge step up, an absolutely huge step up, and I'm really of the school of thought that actually county cricket is a pretty decent predictor of how a player's going to get on in tests, because very, very, very few batters over the last 20 years, you can count them on one hand, have improved their county championship average when they're playing test cricket. So by the sheer weight of numbers, hundreds of players have played test cricket in the last 20 years for England. You would think that the selectors would understand that as like a basic benchmark, and so I wouldn't have picked Crawley to start with. He got the 2.6, was it 2.67 he got, and then that extended his run. I'm not saying he's a bad player at all. In fact, I think he's a white ball cricket. I think he's an excellent player. Test cricket, I think for me, I wouldn't pick him until he averaged 40 plus in Div 1 in Championship.
Yeah, I think there's a fair argument for that. I think the point about white ball cricket is quite compelling as well. If you look at the breakdown of stats, if you just saw the numbers and somebody said this guy's going to play for England in one format next week, you would say it's probably going to be T20 cricket. His list A average isn't great, but I think we've talked about that before as well. He hasn't played for a long time, but if you looked at it, you'd say looks like he's got a pretty good game for top order batting. I think his strikes in excess of 150, an okay average. Yeah, he looked like a scary proposition. He averages like 31 in first class cricket. It might even be less than 31 now. It's certainly sub 30
and that's in tests as well.
Yeah, and it's sub 30 in tests. And in tests, he's got this 267 on the world's flattest deck that props that up by a significant amount of runs. I think he's averaging 11.9 this year. It's the lowest average by any batter in the top 4 ever.
Classic case of mean reversion.
I think it's a little bit of that. I think what it really is it's a classic case of how easy cricket can be if you're playing on a really flat deck against a demoralised opposition. I think that Pakistan team wanted to get the flight home. I think that they were playing on. I mean, it was such an easy wicket. I mean, Dan Norcross was talking about this as well. They basically packed up and went home with a session to go, and England were the only team that could win. They were bowling. I mean, didn't Azhar Ali get about 180? He never looked like he was going to get out. It was a little. There were sort of exceptional circumstances to that particular performance, and then since then he's been so bad. I just don't think he can be anywhere near the team. What I genuinely think it is, Dan, is that he's a project for them now, and to get rid of him is an admission that their assessment of players in the first place was bad. So from the point of view of not embarrassing themselves, not being questioned by people who could question them by the media, whatever, by me, by you, maybe not by us, I think we do question them, but by a lot of people, it's easier just to keep him in the side and hope for the best than it is to say we have been making a terrible mistake for 2 years now. We've wasted a batting spot in the England team. We could know loads more about a bunch of other guys, but we persisted with this guy instead. And the other thing is, it's not like, I don't know, say even Burns, yeah. If Burns has a couple of bad tests now, they drop him for the 4th test, he could be recalled for the 5th test. And I don't think people would be outraged by that. I think he's shown enough that he can probably do something, and maybe he just needed a rest from the limelight. If Crawley drops out of the team, Crawley's gone. He has to go back. He has to, like you say, prove himself at a lower level to have another chance. Because he's been so bad for so long that you couldn't bring him back in. You'd have to try someone else. On the topic of other people...
Organisational kind of structure... talk about business. You talk about it happens in business a lot. Certainly, in my experience, happens in cricket a lot as well. Is like in these scenarios, if someone's put a lot of faith in someone, coaches, selectors, they tend to double down on them even more. And this that scenario that you mentioned about that sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah,
it is a thing in cricket. I can promise you that from working with teams and stuff. It is 100% a thing. The more faith you put in someone, the more chances they get. 100%.
Yes, and they. I mean, we're talking like monotheistic religion amounts of faith that the ECB have put into Zach Crawley so far. I'm pretty sure in Tom Harrison's house or whatever, or in Silverwood's house, there's a shrine dedicated to this theoretical saviour, and it's all basically because he has a nice cover drive. It's a weird thing that happens. I don't know. Maybe it does happen elsewhere in the world, but he's got a nice cover drive, and it's like they've seen that he has a nice cover drive and thought maybe we could just build a game around that. And it's not working. I think he has to go. Potential replacements. I wanted to run a few names past you, and see what you had to say about a few potential others. The people's choice at the moment, David Milan. Is there a realistic prospect that he could come back into the team? Do you think he'd be any good?
I don't think. Did he actually play that much in the County Championship?
He played one match. I think he got 100. So
I think that the people are going to want to pick him for Australia away. So it makes logical sense that if you're going to integrate someone, it probably will be him. Okay. But you can also look at, you talk about Zach Crawley's cover drive. If you're going to replace it, why don't you go for the person with the best cover drive?
Don't say it. No, I mean, Darren Gough said he'd like to see James Vince open the batting for England in Test matches. And if that isn't proof that Darren Gough's a moron, then I don't know what is.
He had an argument with me on Twitter on IPL auction day. I'm not going to go down that road again. And I love his commentary at the moment. He's subtly hinting in every single match that he'd love to be like head of recruitment for a T20 team somewhere.
Apparently, we have more people watching than ESPN Cricinfo now. So take that, Jared Kimber and George DeBell. This is where the party's at. A few other names. Tom Abel, and I'll tell you why I think they should be in the team. Averages over 60 this year. I think he did the same the last full championship season. 27, which I think is a pretty good age to pick people. They should know their game by then. You should have... if they average 60 for 2 years in a row, it's probably not a fluke or people haven't worked them out. Then we've got Josh Bohannon averaging 55 this year, 45 overall in his career, age 24. Hasn't played as many matches as some of the other people that you could pick, so maybe there's an inexperience or a novice's luck factor in there that would turn you off.
He's scored for years now, and did it at second team level before he got promoted as well. So
yeah, and then Jake Libby, averaging 61 this year. I think he had a decent season last year. Higher career average than Crawley. He was a little bit more of a fringe pick. Alex Davis, career average of 36, averaging 48 opening the batting for Lancashire this year. And then there's Sam Northeast, who I think's had a little bit of trouble in county cricket this year, so maybe not an obvious pick, but you'd think career-wise would be a better option.
Yeah. A few of them are hipsters' choices, certainly, I think. I like Abel, the Abel selection. He's done really well last year or two. And I've got to know him a little bit, obviously, through the 100 as well, because he plays for us at Birmingham Phoenix. He's a good guy. I think potential leader as well. Certainly a calm head. And I think he could do a really good job, actually.
The other one, obviously, is Hasib Hamid. So for the next match, the names we've just listed there, they're not in the squad. I don't think they can come in because of the bubble situation. Hasib Hamid is. Are you a buyer or a seller? So in the chat, thanks Vic for reminding me of that, by the way. Hasib Hamid in for Crawley and play the 3 opener approach.
Well, you could say that it's you may as well play 3 openers because one of them's going to go pretty quickly usually. Even over the last few years of evidence is anything to go by. I mean, personally, you asked me if I'm a seller or a buyer of Hamid. I am a watcher. He's had one good year this year, and I think I would want to see him back it up again next year before I rushed into anything.
Honestly, when he was picked, it did feel a little bit like it felt like some of the same reasoning as for keeping Zach Crawley in the side.
Yeah,
it was like we've seen he did okay once 3 years ago in India. Exactly the same conditions as England. So why don't we bring him in because he's had a good 8 weeks basically in the last 3 years.
That previous selection.
Well, it is, yes, yeah. It's like we were right back then to have this guy, so let's bring him back and have him again. I'm just having a look through my notes for what else we didn't talk about. We talked about Sibley, we talked about the Indian bowling. I think that upset some people. Sorry about that. The other highlights that I thought were worth bringing up. India bowled a no ball at one point because they had 3 men behind square, which is the most park cricket thing I've ever heard at the top level, I think. Dan, have you ever seen that?
I haven't seen that, but I've seen a few times. I think what happened actually in one of the games in the 100 this year is that a team they had too many men outside the circle and they got a no ball from that. It's pretty novice.
It was pretty novice. The Stuart Broad Yorker, we talked about that, and I think it's worth flagging how good Rishabh Pant was behind the stumps as well.
Yeah, I heard about this whilst I was on the coach earlier.
Yeah, I think there was a view, or some people thought he might struggle in English conditions. I think there's a view, and this might be wrong to be honest. I mean, but based on what I've seen, that he's not the most natural wicketkeeper, and that maybe they can find a role for Ridham Saha back in the side. But I thought to be honest, he was really, really excellent standing back to what was at times some quite wayward bowling and with a lot of swing after bat as well, which is what usually confuses away teams or away keepers.
He's really improved over the last year or two.
Yeah. We've had a message in on our chat here. If Michael Vaughan was a podcast, it would be you guys, which is an absolutely fucking outrageous statement. So I'm just going to pause things here to call that out as nonsense. There is an actual Michael Vaughan podcast if you want to subject yourself to that, and I guarantee you it's nothing like this. It's
Jack, is that your new advertising slogan?
All of that stuff brings us on to the England batting, the England bowling, the Indian batting. Sorry. India, they finished today 52 for 1. The only player to fall was KL Rahul. I sent a tweet from the main account earlier in the match saying that I would be a little bit surprised if he scored more than 150 across the next 9 innings in England, the way he bats and against the bowling he was facing and doing a job that is very difficult. It wasn't necessarily a point about how good or bad KL Rahul was. It was basically what I was saying was KL Rahul's quite an average opener and he's doing a very hard job, so enjoy the 80 from the first innings. He started off pretty well here though, and I thought I would be eating humble pie on the podcast tonight until Stuart Broad got him out. Dan, I don't know, KL Rahul is a long-term opener in English conditions. I don't know if that tracks well in your mind.
I think it's another one that the jury's certainly out. And again, it's disappointing that Ross isn't on here because the ball eater didn't eat balls today.
He's absolutely loving it, Ross. Though he thinks this is the best thing that's ever happened to Ross. Is that KL Rahul scored some runs in Test match cricket, and
quickly as well.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, when the IPL comes back round, he'll be bringing it up. So,
what are the odds of him scoring at slower than 26 off 38 in one of the IPL matches?
Ooh, I reckon 5-1. So I think it's a possibility that. Yeah. Otherwise, Pujara lived dangerously, chipped one up in the air at one point, dangled his bat a couple of times, edged one through slip. Rohit Sharma basically blocked out for the close of play. At 52 for 1, needing 157. Dan, what chance do you give each of the three results?
When England got up for 303, I think India needed 209, was it? I thought it was about a 50-50 game. I don't know what the win viz was or whatever, but that's kind of how I thought it was.
I thought India were slight favourites at that point.
They definitely are now.
Yeah. Big time now, I think.
Like, 70-30, 75-25, something like that.
Well, so there is supposed to be some rain about. Before you joined, I was messaging in the chat. I had 70-15-15. I really don't rate England's chances here. I think there's one route to victory based on what we've seen this evening, and that's Ollie Robinson bowling a lot of overs very tightly, and the pitch continuing to be a little bit up and down. We didn't really see Anderson and Broad get too much weird stuff out of it. Obviously, they're skilled bowlers, so they were a challenge, but Robinson had a couple of balls that were virtually unplayable, and you string them together, you get a bit of luck. One flies to a couple of them fly to a fielder. You probably get Pant early because if he faces 50 balls, it's probably over. And then
he's blazing 50 or 30 with Pant to win it tomorrow. Yeah, all the kids going mad.
But yeah, so I think we're probably agreed that India are the favourites here. Is there anything that England could do, or you think they won't do, or is there a tactic that you'd suggest for them?
Not really. I don't. I just think that they've got three quality. Well, still got Anderson and Broad are veterans. They've still got three world class seamers, and I think that Ollie Robinson, certainly in English conditions at least, even though he hasn't played a lot, is you could put him in that bracket. I mean, I tweeted yesterday that Robinson, his taking to Test cricket like a duck to water, like I said earlier, really not a surprise. Anyone who's built a half decent model which translates county championship performances to Test cricket would tell you that Ollie Robinson was easily good enough for Test cricket a little while back.
I think it's only because England are pretty blessed in that department that he hasn't played. I mean, like last year, their bowling attack was Wokes, Archer, Anderson, and Broad in some tests. But
what about Sam Curran? He hasn't made things happen with the ball so far. So maybe he might do so tomorrow.
I don't see it happening, to be honest. I mean, beyond the who they selected issues, in that I don't think Crawley should be in the team. Lawrence is a pretty much an edge case. I don't think there was really much of a case for Bairstow to come back in, but I guess with Stokes out, that Joe Root needed a mate. So they brought him in, and what did he get? 55 across both innings. That's not a disaster. I thought that England maybe were a bowling option light. I don't think, or maybe another way to look at it is, I don't think Curran is good enough to be a fourth bowler in a Test match and bowl those overs. And I think that will cost England big time as well in the second innings. If they had, he scored some runs, so it does even out, and they do need a batting. They probably did need a batting option there down the order, but. In the Indian first innings, what did he bowl? 15 overs, 57, 3.8 and over. He's almost unusable in this situation. And they had to have known going into this match, with the rain and with the pitch they were going to be playing on and with the conditions in England, that there was a possibility that they would need decent amount of good overs from their fourth bowling option, and they pick someone who's quite erratic, isn't particularly threatening, and isn't particularly economical.
Do you think that he benefits from the left arm tax?
Yeah, he does. I mean, like he definitely brings a different dynamic to it. If he was a right arm bowler, he'd be nowhere near Test cricket. I don't think. I don't think he'd present a realistic challenge. What I would say with him, and this is maybe slightly more unique to India than some other nations, but because India are stacked full of right-handed batters, I think the value of him being left arm is lower because, generally speaking, left armers have a higher bowling average against right-handed batters than they do lefty on lefty. It's basically because of LBW, I think, but there's a few runs in it. So I think not only is he not a particularly good bowler, but I'm not sure that his matchups are quite as galaxy brain as the England selectors.
Yeah,
think they are.
Actually, he against left-handers, he takes wickets much more prolifically. Averages just over 40 balls per wicket, but his economy is markedly worse. Goes for 3.8 against right-handers, 3.1 economy. 74 balls per wicket, so he's very ineffective against right-handers.
He's quite ineffective against both, to be honest. I mean, he's bowling in a run environment where 3.1 and over is quite a good run rate. And look, I've said it before. I've said it quite a few times that I don't think Sam Curran's my number one pick for the Test team.
I mean, if Chris Wokes was fit, I would say
100%. I think Chris Wokes is a big miss for England here. I think it could be quite. He brings more with the bat than Curran, substantially more, I think, as well. I think England and England fans have been quite slow to acknowledge this, that Curran is not as good a batter as he first appeared to be in Test cricket in 2018. Wokes is a very good batter, particularly for someone coming in at number 8. And I think brings more with the ball, particularly in English conditions. But again, it's of the selections that they make, that's not what I would do. He's not the most heinous, so I'm happy to overlook it. Anyway, we have got a few questions in, and we'll wrap up the show because it's been a little bit of a long one. The weather, for unique knowledge, tomorrow there's supposed to be a storm about lunchtime. If that's really bad, then draw could come back into the game. But I think it's supposed to basically be one passing band of rain, and that's it will knock an hour out of the match, but shouldn't prevent India from getting 150 or England taking 10 wickets. Unless something goes particularly wrong. Truebake on Twitter asked the same thing, so we've answered that. Pranjal, who is a Messi fan, apparently. I copied the wrong question, so I didn't get that. We had some questions earlier on the chat, though. Where did Shammy go wrong today? I think I sort of talked about this. I think he tried to pitch it up a little bit too much. I think the back of the length option on this pitch was better, and it is in general not back of a length, but the traditional length, not pitching it up, is better in Test cricket in general. It just means that you do miss the bat a bit more, and so you appear to be unlucky. But I think he went searching for wickets a little bit, maybe because they had a big lead and they had the opportunity to do that early in the day, but I didn't think he was too impressive. It was really good in the first innings, though, and I expect he'll probably have quite a good series. Do England need a complete overhaul, Dan?
Do you mean the team or the management or the selection
just take it however you want. I mean, I guess the whole thing.
Yeah, I think they do, and I think they do in all formats, to be honest with you. And this is something we can talk about maybe now or another time. I don't mind, but I think that there's a lot wrong with the selection policy, and I'm not being shy of saying that. On social media, on here, in articles, whatever. But what we're going to see as well is we're going to see this divergence of skills from one format to the other as well. So what frustrates me sometimes is that you get guys like, I don't know, Joe Clark, Harry Brook, people like that who are really massive white ball talents right now, and then people are like, oh, well, let's get them in the test team. Well, how about we just appreciate that they are such a good white ball player and get them in the white ball team? and I feel like there's this permanent debate on Twitter in particular and newspapers and stuff. And to be honest with you, I think it's a load of nonsense. The people say, oh, well, the county cricket's not taken seriously enough. We don't play enough county cricket. It's played at the wrong times and stuff like that. Well, do you know what? If you're getting runs on a green seamer in Durham in April, that's probably as difficult as Test cricket is. So actually, maybe playing at the extremes of the season is actually a pretty good test. Plus, we play more first-class cricket in England a county regular has the ability to play more matches in England than any other first-class system in the world. Okay? Yeah. Not just that, I think you might mention on one of your other pods this week, Indian players, Kohli hasn't played a domestic game, I don't think, since 2012 in India. Was it Rohit Sharma, 2016, stuff like that. So if it's good enough for them, how you can't have it both ways, do you know what I mean? In terms of, you can't turn around, when England do badly, you can't turn around and say, well, it's because they don't play enough county cricket. And then... Yeah,
I feel like this is particularly bizarre as well. It's like it's the only thing, the only way you could practice is by turning up for Kent. It's like, no, mate, like there's a whole performance centre. Like it's...
But not just that. I genuinely think that, and people in the media are as guilty of this as anybody. They are using this to drive their own agenda. They want to see more county cricket. They want to see less white ball cricket, and they are then using that to drive their own agenda-driven articles. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all. But if you look at the numbers, there is more county cricket or domestic cricket played in this country, red ball cricket, four-day cricket, than any other country in the world. So the fact that we don't prepare players to play Test cricket is, I think, nonsense. Now, you can make the argument and say, well, most county bowlers are like 80 mile an hour or whatever, and that's different to Test cricket. Yeah, you're probably right. But how about some of our players actually go and boss those 80 mile an hour county players first before you promote them to Test cricket against Broomer and Mitchell Stark and all these people, you know?
Yeah. That's a good way to end. I remind we've had 5,000 playbacks on this, so that's a really good number. There's 355 people listening now or watching now. If you all hit like, that will beat the YouTube algorithm. If you all hit subscribe, we'll be really happy. And if you all leave a comment once I've wrapped this up or whatever, we'll get back to you later. There's a couple of questions we didn't get to. Sorry about that, everyone. We will be back. I think we're going to do tomorrow. So we were supposed to be playing cricket, but it's poured down with rain in London. So I think that will get called off in the morning. So I expect we'll do a post-match show tomorrow evening. Please do join us. Have a good one. Dan, do you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack. Yeah, goodbye, everyone. I'll speak to you guys soon.
Cool. Cheerio. Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, no worries. Good